Yes. Are we good? Like, what do you mean that there's an error? Why is this so hard? Okay. All right. So we're live streaming. Okay. Holy shit! I better hurry up and mute this shit. Okay. Like it used to be a little bit easier to stream on YouTube. There wasn't so much shit to configure. Okay. Oh no. We do not want like mic echo. It's the worst. Okay, anyways. Let me arrange these things real quick in case any of my viewers want to like chat with me. Oh no. Don't fuck anything up. Wait a second. What do you mean? Okay. Sorry about this. Trying to make sure that like. All right. Just want to know that my content is going to be online. It's going to be backed up. It's going to be archived, and I think we're good. As long as the OBS doesn't crap out, which means like I just can't like do too many things at once. It's kind of sad. I won't ever be able to have like a decent computer. I'll be slow. Like I have what I have right now in terms of like things that I have in life to be able to engage in hobbies and skills and stuff. I can never have a job in America. America is a complete lie for me. It is a joke. My life, I'm a person who has high functioning autism, who's never really been like acknowledged to have like the diagnosis that they have. I've never been treated like the way I should have been by my family. I've never like because like it was more important essentially for them to cover up like my early childhood head trauma that was caused by Temple Connor, my sister, and I think Craig Eversole. I don't know if he really had anything to do with it, but it wouldn't surprise me to find out that he did because it happened at about that time that they were dating, and they've never actually even really talked to me about what happened other than I was jumping on the bed, hit my head, boom, end of story. You had head trauma, but there were a couple stitches, there was no problem. And luckily I was old enough for it to not really be that big of a problem. But that actually gave me PDD-NOS, which at the time was on the autism spectrum and then got named something else. But it is a diagnosis on the autism spectrum. And then also, like, I was under the impression that autism was not on my medical records. It actually is. And I only found this out like a couple months ago. So that's fucking fantastic that, like, I've been, like, and it just goes to show you that no one is on my side. No one is trying to help me whatsoever. And it's almost as though society is architected in such a way that it is illegal to aid David Connor. Not that the early childhood stuff would have anything to do with what is happening now. However, like, no one ever like told me why I should pay extra attention to social stuff because it was more about like making it not look like my sister's fault because at the time like oh no like 2 or 3 year old kid has head trauma, he might be retarded for life, we don't know yet, but let's try to make sure that Temple Connor, who is not clearly like an infant who suffered like head trauma with like unquestionable like with vague like extrapolated consequences. Let's try to make sure it doesn't look like it's her fault. Let's not ruin her life. His life might already be ruined, but let's not like, and that's like that set basically everybody's approach to handling the situation, which was to hush it up for me and make it so that no one ever like handled it in a realistic way like for me, but then always like tried to protect her from the consequences of what she did while she was babysitting me. But whatever. That doesn't really like what caused it doesn't really matter to me so much as like the lack of a response for my entire life. Like no one ever handled it in like a clear way. Like no one ever handled it in the way that it should have been handled. Instead of handling like my early childhood head trauma in such a way as to like put me around psychological professionals in early childhood, which they didn't, and like instead of doing any of that, like instead of like trying to convince me like why it should be important for me to examine my own social behavior and to focus on my own challenges and to overcome specifically the challenges that I would be encumbered with as somebody who has PDD on NOS and who is diagnosed as having PDD and NOS. Like instead of any of that, what happened was my mom found out that when I went to a neurologist who gave me an MRI, that I had PDD NOS, and she was like, "Oh God, no! Like my son is like can't possibly be anything wrong with my son. I'm gonna continue to like cover all like, and I'm gonna get into all of that shit some other time because I've got an outline for a live stream and maybe like a post that I'm gonna do on auto psychoanalysis and all the things that were mishandled with with respect to my psychology." And it's really fucked up because it left me with like I have nothing, and then nobody in my life, like I don't care whose fault it is, but no one in my life like accurately like is like, okay, this is where he is now. There was some fucked up stuff that happened and was mishandled. This is how we move forward. No one has a realistic plan of moving forward. They all expect to be able to drop the ball until I'm institutionalized and then medicated into submission and then never able to achieve anything. Like they think that they can just like that like and it's so fucked up because no one has eyes on the situation. And that's why you can't ever expect to get that's like the number one factor like that implies that you can never expect my situation to get any better because there's no one who is looking at the situation. The only person in contact with me is my mother. And my mother is a narcissistic bitch who is the worst kind of narcissist except for an incompetent and she's the worst kind of narcissist besides a competent narcissist, which is an incompetent narcissist. Okay, so a competent narcissist can be toxic and manipulative, right? And they can be good at it and they can get away with it with respect to how competent they are in their narcissism. But an incompetent narcissist is not quite as bad, but is like tragically worse in that they fuck everything up, but then what compels them to be narcissistic is covering up for their own mistakes and covering up for their own ineptitude. Anyways, so like, and one of the reasons I'm pissed is because like things like this Bobby Blankenship bullshit will happen to me, and no one in my family will listen to me. And in fact, they've actively engaged in like the cover up or whatever bullshit this is. So like I've typed up a lot of stuff already for this Dirty Santa bullshit, and you can read it right here. In fact, I'm going to make it a little bit larger because it's just really hard to like. It's really hard to read. I'm really mad. I'm sorry. I think I get the feeling that like people might understand why I'm mad. I think I'm gonna turn the mic down. It should be in the yellow. Yeah, okay, so it's way too loud. I'm not very good at this. I don't know if you know. I don't know if it's obvious. Let me see. All right, so let me type up the. Let me get down here. I think I. Okay. I'm gonna start at the end. That's the best way to do this kind of stuff. And I think I've typed a lot of this stuff up, and there's just a lot of questions that I have where it's like, yeah, okay, so why is it so important to not answer these questions? Like, why would you want to leave me? Like, when people's like, what I did in response to this a month after this happened was really, I don't know, you could say it was immature. I would say that it's calculated, you know, like, and it's like the kind of like calculation that I have a tendency to miscalculate, which is what I'm talking about, and which is kind of what I'm writing about in here. Whoops. Right. and this basically sums up like one of my like this sums up what the problem is with Asperger's and high functioning autism, and for me to not be like people are like, okay, like he has high functioning autism. I don't get it. I don't get it. Like blah 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 blah. Well, like the effects are kind of hard to see. They're hard to understand in my case because it's high functioning. So I have autism, and it may be autism and PDD and OS, or simply just PDD and OS. I have no clue, and nobody will talk to me about it. That's the thing. Nobody. My mom's like la 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 la. I'm an incompetent narcissist. I don't understand. I don't blah, blah. I'm a little old lady. Like I don't know. Well, maybe you should get the fuck out of the way. All right. Like, and that sounds really mean, but I've had it, and like it's like it's one thing for somebody to be like uh like unaware and not cognizant, and it's a whole other thing for somebody to be intentionally toxic and very cognizant of what they're doing to their own child. And that's why I've just fucking gone off. I can't take it. It's destroying my life, and I actually have the potential to do something with my life. Like my ideas, my writing can transform the world. And that sounds a little lofty and a little crazy, but it's not. If you understand what I'm talking about, it would provide someone like me a means to not have made the mistakes that they did. That is like what I write for. I take my own experience. I understand, like, I find a way for me, the high functioning autist or autistic person, to understand social behavior that is so ineffable and so incomprehensible. And I managed to be exposed to this I set of ideas called social physics, and now I can model anything. And anyway, so the problem with me is that I have high functioning autism, but then the consequences are not so easy to understand. You're like, and I have the tendency to miscalculate. So I'll look at like a social situation, and this was way worse like towards the end of high school and like during my college years, my post college years. It's not so bad now, but I still have the chance to get it horribly wrong, which is exactly what happened when I posted all the screenshots of Bobby's Facebook messages. Like, and it never should have come to that. Like, somebody should have been there for me, like to like understand what had happened. And there was one person there that at about 3 or 4 days after everything had happened, he saw a Facebook post that I made, and he sort of tried to like establish, like a he tried to like he invited me over to his house. We hung out, and the whole thing ended up feeling, it was nice. It was a nice gesture, but the whole thing ended up feeling like he was just fishing for me for information, and he was going to relay the information that I gave him without giving me any information about what was going on, and that he was going to relay information to people that were going to help cover it up, all while never taking anything that I said seriously, which is what happens whenever I say something's happening to me. No one does anything. No one listens. Nobody's there emotionally for me. And what has happened is that somebody who is like emotionally traumatized by many, 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 many events throughout their life and is socially disconnected is completely left with no one to listen to that person. So I've got these like emotional scars in my psyche, and anytime you touch a memory that is close to one of those things, it triggers PTSD, and I'm like constantly from that point on, it's like you push a button, and from that point on, like I'm like spun out, and I'm forced to re-examine the same memories over and over again and try to explain them when I don't have enough information to move forward. And it's really frustrating when it's information that somebody could easily give me. So somebody could easily cut through more than half of my emotional trauma, and they could provide me like a means for moving on, but they don't, because they would rather have me like tormented for the rest of my life by my own memories. because it's disempowering. And then also, like, it's something where you spin me up, and then I generate a bunch of content online, and I socially miscalculate. I'm thinking that, oh, if somebody could just know what happened to me, there's no way they could let this continue. So I'm socially disconnected. I'm lashing out on Facebook. I'm like lashing out at people that are close to me who might otherwise help, and then uh, I'm essentially left with nothing and no recourse. And I'm kind of, and it's something that like you're taking somebody who's already psychologically kind of like dealing with their own issues. Like I have PDD and OS. I have high functioning autism. Um, and then you're like that person's psychology is already fragile. Like it doesn't take very much to destroy that person, especially when you provide them like no social connection, no support network, no anything like that. And what like pisses me off is that I should be able to sue the fuck out of somebody, and I'm getting tired of it. I'm getting tired of being fucking like put through these fucking situations and then left to like emotionally seethe and like I'm so fucking tired of that. The next time somebody fucking screws with me, I'm gonna sue the fuck out of everything that moves. And I get that nobody's listening to this live stream. Like I don't actually expect anybody to listen to this. But I'm putting it out there, and this is kind of like it's kind of put me at a disadvantage. Okay, let me go ahead and get to the whole point because this is my tendency. Anyway, like I have a tendency to like miscalculate, so that's why I did the whole like Bobby Blankenship thing where I like released a whole bunch of like uh screenshots of his Facebook messages because he logged into Facebook right before this whole thing went down, and then like 2 or 3 days afterwards, I remembered that like Facebook like says like that. I remembered how like lame the PlayStation browser is, and like I was like, oh yeah, I bet I have access to all his like Facebook messages. And then I also get the feeling that he did that on purpose, that he did that and wanted to leave me with a bunch of misinformation. And you would think like, wow, like Bobby really thought ahead. Like, somebody was assisting him this whole time. Like the whole time, like the whole month before everything happened, somebody was assisting him. He's not actually that smart. Like he was using like NLP like type techniques. I guess he was in jail and learned a little bit. Like jail is like honestly like crime university for criminals. Like that's what people don't understand. You put people in jail. The only people they have to socially network with are criminals, and then they come out of jail with what? No access to jobs. No, and like this is why the recidivism rate is so high. They have no access to jobs. They get pushed away like people who were formerly in their life tend to push them away. So they come out of and then they're not like permitted like the same access to opportunities for like social welfare. Like, and I don't know if their welfare like program status is like impacted. I know they can't vote. They can't like there's a lot of consequences of being a felon. You come out of jail, you have nothing. What do you have though? You have all the social connections you formed with criminals on the inside. That's all you have. People come in, people leave. You form connections with people that are there, and then when you get out, you have nothing. So what do? You go to the social connections you do have. And that's why, like, sociophysically, I can explain everything. Every fucking thing. I can quantify it. I can explain it. I can break it down in terms of this like set of patterns that allows you to quantify and explain social like phenomena. It is incredibly powerful. And since it's quantitative, it is incontrovertible. You can't really argue with it. Um, and so you can take any moralist like kind of policy that you want, So any moral kind of like feel good policy, like, let's put them in jail, like take them out of society. We don't need them here. They're causing problems. We put them in jail. It solves all the problems. Does it really? Does it really? And I agree. I hate heroin. I hate hard drugs. Hard drugs ruin people's minds. Hard drugs ruin lives. Hard drugs inspire crime. I can't take any of that stuff. But sometimes I do take some of this stuff. That's actually not funny though. But like, there seem to be some people that experiment in hard drugs, like myself, and they realize that like it's not, like, it's a terrible world. You connect yourself with horrible people. You tend to do damage to your brain because like high levels of like dopamine and high levels of these hard drugs like actually do cause problems. If you mess around with heroin these days, you're gonna find yourself like you're probably gonna find yourself dead. Especially if you consider yourself a political dissident and actually believe the government's out to get you, like you're gonna magically wind up with fentanyl in your bag and you're gonna die. Like that's just gonna happen to you. And even if somebody doesn't intend for that to happen to you, it's amazing like how like and fentanyl makes me sick. Like I cannot take fentanyl. Um, I can't. It makes me mad because I know why people sell it. People sell it because molecularly you can. There's purely synthetic like means of synthesizing it. There's purely artificial means of synthesizing it. You can make it purely artificially. There's no. It's not semi-synthetic. It's purely synthetic, and it's purely synthetic in a way that like the pathways to produce it are like fairly like they're a lot more accessible than the chemical like reaction pathways that would allow you to produce uh, pharmaceutical grade like opiates like purely synthetically, if that's even possible. I don't even know if you can really. Most pharmaceutical like opiates come from like come from opium, like come from poppies, uh, poppy like based products that are grown in Australia, uh, and any poppy based products that are grown in Thailand and like in the Golden Crescent and the Golden Triangle like are not they're not really like endorsed by like the world like the international order. So the international order like approves of Australian poppy products, but does not approve of Afghani poppy products and does not approve of like Thailand poppy products. So Australian poppy products end up like being the basis that's used for semi-synthetic like production of morphine and hydrocodone and oxycodone and those kinds of drugs. And but that's a completely separate chemical process than what is used to produce fentanyl. And what makes me so angry about fentanyl is that like it's a really dirty thing, and the doses are so small. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get like product that's produced somewhere like China. You're gonna get a lot of it. You can get a lot of it for real cheap, and then because the doses are microgram doses, uh, you can't you have to like process it's very difficult to process what you receive, and so there's a tendency for the dose of fentanyl to be completely like to wildly fluctuate because you have to, and if you inhale the dust while you're doing this stuff you'll kill yourself, which is why like if there's a fentanyl bust for some reason, it has to be handled very, very carefully because the law enforcement personnel that are like handling like fentanyl busts of large quantities, have to handle the stuff that they seize very carefully. But what it means is that people die. So somebody's getting rich, drug dealers are getting rich while people die while the drug itself is used as a means to murder people. That's why I can't stand fentanyl. And obviously, it's a drug that has really very little value. And actually, if you're a drug addict, like fentanyl doesn't do anything for you because fentanyl doesn't like trigger the same like chemical pathways as like diacetylmorphine, which is heroin, or like morphine or oxycodone. it doesn't give you euphoria. What it does is it gives you the sensation that you're receiving an opiate in your body with very little euphoria and lots of respiratory depression. So if you're taking any kind of Xanax whatsoever, or if you're taking any kind of any other drug, if you take something that has fentanyl in it, you're gonna die because it takes a very little bit. Like it doesn't take very much fentanyl at all to cause the respiratory depression. And then there's lots of other factors. So you might be safe with a certain amount of fentanyl. You never know how much you're going to take because you don't know like how the person mixed the fentanyl into like the bags. You don't know whether or not the person who received the fentanyl, who is driven primarily by greed, like you don't know that they mixed it properly, like and can weigh it out. You don't know that. And so like people are out there dying. Like there have been so many drug overdoses because of this. And what is driving it? Greed. People want to make money. Why do they want to make money? Because they're heroin addicts. They're driven by like this like nihilistic self like it's horrible. Anyways, it's nihilistic greed or whatever because it's greed without purpose. What are they greedy for? Because they want to pay money back that they owe because they wanted to get high. And so what do? They order fentanyl from China, like through like the Silk Road or some shit like that, and people start dying everywhere. Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. You know, like what's great about marijuana? Nobody died smoking a marijuana cigarette. Like, I mean, not really. It's a fantastic drug. You can't die doing it. That's actually really important. Anyway, so let me go ahead and type these things up real quick. Start at the end here. I'm just really I'm really passionate about these kinds of topics because they're important. And then this is also what makes me kind of controversial. But I actually do like as my my speech, is not very. I'm not very articulate. It's hard for me to break down my ideas. I have a tendency to misstate or misspeak, or it's easy to like push my buttons and emotionally rile me up, and then you got to understand I have Asperger's, and like people with Asperger's have extreme interests, and so there's a right way and a wrong way to handle people like me. So when I was like in college at Virginia Tech, like there was a right way for people to approach my extreme interest in drugs, and there was a wrong way for people to approach my interest in drugs, and they just wanted to destroy me. And then to top it all off, nobody really knew I had Asperger's, and then that looked really bad. So it looks really bad that you fucked with somebody's head who has Asperger's, and so they try to cover it up, and then they made people have made so many miscalculations with regard to my psychology, and they never should have been making calculations based on my psychology in any way, really. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not in the way that they made calculations based on my psychology. It's really fucked up. Anyways, so what I want to say is number 24. I gotta go through the rest of these. Why is it? Why is it that I'm not connected to a single person who cares enough about me to help me explore options for retaliating or defending myself? So basically, like when, and I'll come back overall, I'm going to come back and talk about each one of these. Oops. Okay. All right, Emacs. Thanks a lot. Oh, there we go. That's wonderful. It does that for you. It does that for you. That's something it does for you. All right. And what I mean is like when I like 2 days after this happened, or in the days after this happened, no one I talk to about it no one that I talked to about no one I talked to about it like ever tried to like move me like towards options for dealing with what happened. So no suggestions of like getting a lawyer, no attempt no attempts to like help me find a lawyer. And there was nobody that was like, "Oh, this is good." Like live video interrupted. Great. Broadcast has been paused. Great. Of course, I start talking about it, and immediately my stream gets cut. All right, so I'm kind of frustrated because I immediately, like, as soon as I start talking about things that are real, or are what do you call it, germane. Yo, Jermaine, you're on this thing. As soon as I start talking about like topics that are germane, my stream gets cut. But I mean, obviously, that I mean, it just happens. There's nothing nefarious. The NSA did not snip my stream, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did. But I mean, the NSA is not really. I mean, nobody's really like paying attention to what's happening because I only announce like it would be impossible for somebody. I picked this time because nobody's awake. So the only thing that's going to be left is like the actual stream video. And so somebody will have to like look at the somebody will have to look at the actual video. And nobody will know to like try to disrupt me. Nobody like there would be nobody awake to get signals to like respond to my behavior. So I know that. So like they couldn't be responding to me because they are asleep. Not that they would respond to me anyways, but the whole point is like it's a dependent probability thing. Like in order for they to respond to me, like it is a like that is an event, a probabilistic event that is dependent upon they being awake at 4 in the morning, which the probability of that is like almost zero. It's infinitesimal already. So the probability of dependent events, god damn it, is also zero. Wonderful. How's it doing that? Hopefully that didn't just come out. Yeah, so stop fucking like. Why is it dropping all the goddamn frames? Really? I really don't have any problems with just restream. Alright, I guess I'm back on. I don't know what happened. Maybe they really are snipping my light stream. It's really not hard to do because it's a stream. But actually, it's the OBS software that's like causing problems because my computer can barely keep up. It's kind of lame, so it's not that. But the whole point I was just trying to make was that like there's things that are dependent that are probabilistic events which are dependent on other probabilistic like events or event types that have probability associated with them. So like if you know that the probability of the thing that it's dependent on is zero, then the dependent probability is also really zero because it can't if it's like you know, if it's dependent on the first one happening, then the second one, you know, can't happen without the first one. So it has to be at least multiplicatively, like blah, 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 blah. I mean, I sound like I maybe don't know what I'm talking about, but I actually do. And these are actually very valuable tools for helping me like sort through what might otherwise be like illogical, irrational, or delusional thinking. Because I can just be like I can check like what I'm thinking against like a list of 100 different things that can help me like easily disqualify like certain like modes of thinking, which is incredibly useful, especially if you're going to be using like um, yeah, if you're going to be using inductive reasoning. And what does inductive reasoning mean? It means you're inducing like certain facts, like that like you're inducing certain hypotheses. Um, where you have to like induce something, and then like now you have some fact which is completely hypothetical. Now you reevaluate the system as you know it in light of the hypothetical fact where you don't know it's true, and then you try to reconfigure your like model of the system and then see if it makes any sense. And so what you're doing is you're going out on a limb. This is a tree, and you're going out on that limb, and then now like you need to use inductive reasoning again. You're going out on another limb. Oh great. Yeah, I'm like really like I'm wondering if it's like the encoder. I don't really want to test the encoder because I'm gonna look like a fucking idiot. In order to test the encoder, I would have to like move really fast, which doesn't make any sense. But actually, it's more expensive to encode content in video that has lots of motion, especially when you have like keyframes that are being repeated too often. That's how video codecs work. Anyways, it sounds stupid, but it's real. And if you don't know, then you don't know. So I guess when the world is being devoured by like gray goo, like an artificial like intelligence, like based like nanobots, I'm gonna be one step ahead because I know about video codecs. Okay. Anyway, so number 25, and I don't know how to even deal with this. This is why I don't really stream because like I'm trying to like I could have done this in like 5 minutes. Everything that I've done to write, and like that's it. Like when I produce a written form of communication, when I'm writing, uh, you know, somebody's much more likely to at least skim through that. Whereas like they would already have to be watching the stream for like an hour to even get to this point where I'm talking about things. And it would be a lot easier for me to do this if I had an already written blog. So I think I might just do that. But somebody's much more likely to like potentially. So maybe I won't actually, you know, inject cerebrolysin. I don't know. I'll just say that I did. Because I don't really feel like doing that. It's actually kind of immature. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and drink this. Okay, number 25. Anyways, would it be funny if I didn't do it though? Somebody would have to like watch the whole thing, like figure out like, okay, where's he gonna do it? Do we get the evidence? And it's like, well, you can't really do anything to me. You can have hypodermic needles in Virginia. You just can't so easily buy them. But actually, you can buy them because they changed the laws. I bought them, so there you go. And I have nothing to worry about. because I have nothing in my house that would indicate anything, any kind of problem. So you're fucked. All right, that was my George Bush laugh. It's really good, isn't it? All right. So why is it that situations like this, unlike why is it that situations like this, while rare, allow the perpetrators to operate with impunity while seeding disinformation, covering up, and mitigating risk, but leave me with so little information? So little information. And that's because I'm disconnected. And these are general questions. These are not specific questions. I have about 23 very like specific questions, and I can go back and look at those. Now, this is all on the internet. One of the great ones is like, how did Bobby get away? And I know how he did that. Da-da-da. Number one. And a lot of these questions, as they're kind of structured on here right now, are not really well like understood, or like I can see how you would read through this, and this is like I'm intending to, or not intend. I don't know. I am aware that somebody who reads through this document and is like, okay, this is all the information he's got. Good. Okay, we understand what he's going to try to say in response to this. And what they're going to do is they're going to create court records. They're going to create all these other things that are based on miscalculation. And so the great thing about that is like you've now created court records that like cement what are essentially lies. And so, and then like, and this is how you get out of a conspiracy. If you're really ever in a conspiracy, like what you have to do is hold your cards close to your chest. And why is that important? Or this is also why I put the anime Kakegurui on my live stream here. This is like my like I wish they had more hentai with this chick, but they don't because hentais are kind of lame. But that's besides the point. This chick is like she has this like fascinating sexual like kind of uh, like magnetism towards gambling. So she views sex in the same light, or she views gambling in the same light that most people would view sex. And so she has this like sexual like attraction towards gambling and getting in and out of gambling situations, and goes to a high school where like everything's your status is based on like gambling. Really, there's not so much sex involved. They never really explicitly say it, but you can tell like her lips pucker up like, and then like like she blushes and like all the things that like are like the physiological like things that girls like that motivate girls to wear makeup. Like she exhibits all of those things like when she's gambling. And what does that mean? It means that like girls like wear makeup to make themselves look like they're like climaxing, like they're having an orgasm. That's what motivates like design in like women's makeup. So like women wear and it all goes back to ancient Egypt, and doesn't it always? But women wear makeup because like or they wear makeup the way they wear makeup because they want to look like alluring to men, and they want like for example they want their eyes to appear dilated, which is a little bit hard to do without atropine. Which is why Cleopatra used to basically use atropine to like dilate her eyes, because when your eyes are dilated and when the dilation of your eyes changes, it looks like you have a magnetic connection to somebody. Um, and another thing that they do is they try to use eyeshadow to manipulate how they're they want to recreate like the lighting that's like they want to recreate dim lighting from very specific angles. Blah, 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 blah. They wear blush to make it look like their cheeks are flush with blood, which is what happens not necessarily during sex, but during an emotional connection or during an intimate connection. and they wear the lipstick for the same reason, because like when you have an emotional magnetic connection to somebody, it like causes your lips to flush. Basically, they're trying to like visually recreate the oxytocin, the physiological response of oxytocin with makeup. I don't even know how I got there. Oh yeah, because this girl right here peeking out from behind the text editors. She's that's all the same things happen when she's gambling, which is something that only I would notice. But it's why I have a sexual attraction to it, to a two-dimensional anime character. I mean, not really. I don't really. It's not really so sexual with me. But the animators really went through lengths to like recreate like the oxytocin response for gambling. It's really it's actually a really like intelligent show. It's one of those shows where you're probably going to want to have an IQ of 120 or 140, and when you come out of it, your IQ is going to be about 5 to 10 points higher. It's a really good show. If you get what they're trying to display with the episodes, if you get it, then you will like learn like so much like about not necessarily gambling but human behavior. Which is why I like anime, because anime it's like marketed to very niche consumers. I mean, you've got the fan fiction type stuff, or not fan fiction, but fan service type stuff, which is terrible. Or it's not terrible, but it, it's normally it's like candy. And then you've got stuff like Game of Laplace, Kakegurui, and all these other animes, which are like it's almost like kind of like work to watch it, because like work is in homework, or like work is in like it involves a lot of intellectual thought, and sometimes I don't feel like translating and trying to like think about all those things at the same time. And a lot of it I feel like is lost on most people, even like the niche market that the anime is like marketed for, even like, and it's because like anime is only marketed toward like it's not even marketed domestically really. Anime is like is like this like niche industry in Japan that is like meant to be consumed by people outside of Japan, but and that's not how it started, but that's how it is now. But it's only marketed towards people, and like anime that is like translated into English is like not even that good. Um, like if it's dubbed, I won't even watch dubbed anime, because like first of all it goes through that translation filter, and so Japanese people are very aware of like their country's interface to the outside, and so they do things for the inside of Japan. They're very like um, ethnocentric in the way they interface with the world. And basically, once that anime is translated, it's lost a lot of like its original meaning, and so you're not really like. And then you can actually look at the subtitles and then compare it to the actual anime like dialogue, and there's already a big difference there. Uh, and then whenever I feel like whenever I watch anime in English, and I don't know if it's because I'm watching anime normally in Japanese, which I don't understand very well, but when I watch anime in English, it feels like I'm watching Saturday morning cartoons. Yeah, but see, like there's things like okay, well this might not. I mean, this is not really true, but it was more important that like like yeah, Bobby was aware of like Bobby was aware of when and how like Bobby was aware of information that should have been like uh, private, and it was because like you could explain it in many different ways. You could explain it as like he was snooping around my house, or he was doing all this other stuff, but he like and he gets away with everything. Like he didn't even like he has no additional like charges on his record from anything that happened with me. I don't understand. Uh, like there's nothing. There's like, and he was in my neighborhood allegedly stealing stuff, which is something that the detectives asked me about. Like they were trying to like pin stuff that he stole on me. Like really? Because like narcs don't steal, okay? And I'm gonna refer to that like until I die. Because like narcs, and unless the narc is trying to establish their identity or whatever, but for the most part, narcs don't steal. And like I didn't think he was a narc. I wouldn't think he was a narc. If he was a narc, why was he like trying to get close to me? Like I'm not selling drugs. Like go the fuck away. Like I don't need your drugs. I'm not a drug addict. You're a junkie. You're the person that can't live without like fucking whatever the methadone or whatever the hell it is. Not me. Like I don't need any of that shit. I don't need your shit. Like I've already been through drugs. I went there, I experimented. Like it's not really that great. Honestly, drugs are like a huge letdown. Like you're gonna experiment with them. You're gonna come out with the opinion that either they are a complete waste of time or not. I mean, you probably shouldn't want to experiment with them, but if you do, you're gonna come out with the opinion that either they're a complete waste of time or they're not. And then some people will eventually become disillusioned by the euphoria that they gain from drugs. So they'll like go to drugs because they get euphoria or they feel good, and then eventually they'll be like, this is not what it was like sold to me as. This is boring, or this is like dangerous, or I'm gonna die, or I had a friend die. I'm now disillusioned. I don't want to have anything to do with drugs. And then you have the people that never quite get there. And who are those people? Those are the people who are sort of psychologically imprinted to become addicted to drugs. That's the whole thing. Like when you have drug addiction, there's almost always a root cause to the drug addiction. There's a reason the person seeks out the drug for a like good feeling. Oh, great. It's still fucking. Okay, anyways, I was just now talking about something that like might be controversial, but which is being psychologically imprinted, to be addicted to drugs later in life. Not specifically to be addicted to drugs later in life, but there's certain people who are imprinted psychologically with certain like metatypes of like psychological things. I don't really know how to explain it, like, but anyways, they just like, and one of those metatypes is like not having something in life that like makes you feel fulfilled or gives you an authentic feeling of euphoria. And so people who do not have that will, like, when exposed to drugs, find that feeling of euphoria like ecstatic, like, or to be like authentic ecstasy, because they can't distinguish between real euphoria or real good feelings because they've never had that since early childhood. So because, and then they get into drugs and they're like, wow, this is the thing that makes me feel like I'm a kid, or makes me feel like I'm actually like, it makes me feel euphoria, and I have no way of like accessing euphoria in life except for this thing, and all I have to have is money. I get money, I give it to the person, they give me the drugs, and I feel good. And so it's the person who lacks like any like means of like getting that authentic feel good type feeling. They lack any means of like feeling fulfilled in life or like obtaining a euphoric feeling. um and that's the person who's like sort of like psychologically imprinted to be deposed to drugs, or disposed to drugs, to a drug addiction. So they're going to. There's nothing you can do about it. You can put that person in jail. And sometimes the people will get over it. Like programs like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous tend to help because they give that person a sense of higher purpose. And another thing that give that person a sense of higher purpose is having a child or having a family, because normally that thing precedes like their own need to feel good. All of a sudden, like the child's well being becomes that sense of higher purpose that allows them to break free of drugs. Um, and but a lot of people don't get that early enough, And see, like you can you can either get that child too early or not early enough. For me, like it would probably have been helpful for me to have a child earlier on because it would have caused me to rethink myself and rethink my situation, rethink like how like I interface with the world, and to rethink what myself like it causes you to reevaluate yourself in relation to the world because now you have to evaluate yourself and the self that you created in your child, both like in relation to yourself and to yourselves and to the world. And then you tend to think of yourself as being like you tend to think of your child as being your progeny, the progeny of yourself, which like if you don't help the child, then you are creating your own, you're reduplicating your own circumstance in the child's life. So if that circumstance is incredibly negative, then if you don't do something about your own negative circumstances and your own causes of suffering, the child will experience the same things because you're bringing your own life into the child's life. And so, like, for a lot of different reasons, like just simply having a child or thinking about having a child or almost having a child, like having a pregnancy, and then the pregnancy, like, for some reason doesn't go right, and like you don't end up having a child, it provokes the same like reevaluation of self in relation to the world that having the child would provoke. And so anyway, there's lots of different ways to like cause people to reevaluate themselves and to cause somebody who is imprinted to be predisposed to a drug addiction to no longer be really, it almost like vaccinates them against it because it's psychological. That's what like you can talk about physical addiction all day. Physical addiction is nothing. The causes of addiction are psychological. Psychological addiction is what is going to cause you to, after you've been free of the drug for, and here I'm holding nicotine in my hand. Psychological addiction is what is going to compel somebody who's been free of physical drug addiction to approach the drug again. And this is actually why methadone and what is the other one? Shit. Methadone and buprenorphine are like they're overused. Like those are valid tools in some circumstances, but you're essentially giving an addict like a choice. Like, would you like to like be free of the heroin addiction, which is going to help you a little bit, and then like you can be mildly high all the time, and the government says it's okay. Like, well, almost every drug addict is going to be like, you mean I can get high and I don't have to go to jail, and I don't, and like my health insurance will pay for it, like, and and all I have to do is get red flagged, and like what that does is like in the right circumstances, it takes them away from the drug, and if it's done, if the drug addict responds to it appropriately, they will distance themselves from the social connections that tend to like make them remain close to drugs. It doesn't happen so much with methadone, but with buprenorphine, it's easier to like get away from the source of heroin or the source of opiates. And I have a ton of like understanding of this stuff. Like I can sit here and talk about it for hours and hours and hours, and like. But anyway, what the approaches of methadone treatment and buprenorphine treatment are misguided because it allows people to like remain connected to to getting high, and then they have to like service their addiction by like getting the prescription filled or going in and getting treatment or getting drug tested and like blah 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 blah, and they never break free of it because it's an option that's given to them, and they are drug addicts and they never break free. And the worst part is that like buprenorphine is like once you're on that shit, your tolerance, your long-term tolerance mechanisms are going to go off the charts. If you like, because somebody on especially a higher dose of buprenorphine is like suddenly going to be exposed to the equivalent of like just ridiculous amounts of morphine. I don't remember what like normal doses of morphine are. I think like if you're talking about like the really good stuff, that they only have in hospitals, and I can't remember what it is, but it's like the stuff that's preferable to heroin. Anyway, like I think morphine doses are normally 5 to 10 milligrams, but like buprenorphine equivalent doses, like in terms of morphine, are like 40 or 50 or 60 milligrams of morphine. Like, and so you're just pounding their fucking like their tolerance mechanisms. And so as soon as they come off this stuff, and it'll show if they're coming off of the buprenorphine to go get high on heroin, because they're going to be spun out all over the place in terms of like their addiction mechanisms, and their addiction response and their withdrawal response like mechanisms. Like so, like the pharmacological, the neuropharmacological mechanisms that cause them to react the way they do because of tolerance, because of withdrawal, and because of addiction. So like that's going to cause them to be like psychologically destabilized, and then they're going to need other kinds of treatment because like they're on buprenorphine some of the time, but then they plan out like certain weekends where they withdraw from buprenorphine, they go do heroin, they withdraw from heroin, and they get back on buprenorphine, then they sell a little bit of buprenorphine to like get the drugs or whatever. That's why, like for me, I can see through all this stuff. I was like, I don't I don't like drugs. I don't like any of like I don't I mean I don't like things artificially added to my food. I don't like chemicals. I will occasionally do recreational drugs, but I like to stop. Like I like to be like, I'm done. I don't have to do this. You know? And so for me, like thinking about buprenorphine and thinking about methadone, I was like, I don't want that. I like to not do drugs. I like to not like, and then for me, Adderall is bad enough. Like Adderall is like this thing where like I need it. Like I don't want to need anything else. And that's the thing about drugs is like you already need food, you need water. Do you want to need something else? Do you want to need something else to live and to function? And like you never know if you'll like be one of the people who is like genetically imprinted or psychologically imprinted to be predisposed to a drug addiction, because it affects different people in different ways, and you never really know if you're going to be the person who needs it like really badly. And usually it's not that bad to dabble, but the people who become like addicted, like, and opiates are really the only drug where like if you dabble in it, you might become addicted to it and you'll never be able to stop. Uh, Cocaine and dopaminergic drugs like that you can become addicted to, like amphetamines. You don't really, so unless it's like crack or unless you smoke the drug, you don't. And I've never done that, but unless it's something like that, you'll never become addicted to the drug unless until you start doing it for long periods of time. I don't want to say you never will, but you typically, but some people will. Some people will do like dopaminergic drugs and just be addicted to it real fast. The problem with dopaminergic drugs is not the same kind of addiction that occurs with opiates, in my opinion. And this is, and somebody else might be able to correct me. Um, but it's like becoming dependent on the drug. It's not so much an addiction thing. It's like becoming like your dopaminergic like systems like adjusting to the point where they need the dopaminergic boost in order to function, which seems to be what happened to me with Adderall. And it was something that never happened when I was on like 10 or 20 milligrams of Adderall. It never seemed to happen. Of course, the Adderall XR is like way stronger than Adderall the instant release, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's but it's because of how your stomach breaks down the Adderall instant release and extended release. So for me, Adderall extended release is much stronger and is patented and more expensive, which is annoying. But regardless, when I started taking Adderall like 60 milligrams instant release per day, that's when like I like started to have like dependence type issues. I guess I don't know, but it's not that big of a deal. I just never feel the same. Like, so I can stop doing Adderall for like months at a time, and I just never. And this is like where your dopaminergic systems have like kind of like reoriented themselves around having like an artificial influx of dopamine, and never really adjust to going back to the way they were. And it's this very sinister type of progression that takes a long time for your brain to adjust to. And then it never, for some reason, it never goes back to the way it is. And so you start like people who dabble in dopaminergic drugs will be like, oh, I can do this, I can quit anytime, and that's their attitude towards it, and they'll even test themselves. They'll be like, oh yeah, see, I quit. I can go back to it anytime I want to, and just leave it where it was, and it'll be fine. Like blah blah blah, and then you go like, and then over the course of years is where you get addicted to it, and you don't really become so addicted to it. There are people who become addicted to dopaminergic drugs, but not in the same way. But those people, but the people who become most people like if they're gonna have oh shit I can't with sitting here messing around with this tobacco. Most people who have problems with dopaminergic drugs are gonna be people who have people who develop dependence, which dependence is slightly different than nicotine. You can tell like who's gonna like I don't know. And then some people have like I don't have the ability to really develop coping mechanisms in the same way like because I don't and what I mean are like social coping mechanisms or the same kind of social coping mechanisms like so a lot of people I've watched people like develop social like coping mechanisms where like they can't afford their addiction anymore so then and so then they start to like they understand social behavior very well, and so their social behavior starts to become a little bit more advanced, and they start developing sociopathic tendencies. And it's really sad because they could otherwise apply themselves in different ways, but then they become incredibly toxic and incredibly manipulative. But the way they go about seating themselves around social environments causes people to need them, and then like that person is better off like even though that person is exploitative and manipulative, that person is better off socially than I am because people need them. And people can, like and it really fucking frustrates me how like people can like stand up for people like Bobby or how like people like Bobby can remain socially connected whereas I'm treated like this like social scourge. It makes no fucking sense. But I don't know, I'm kind of wandering and meandering. And this has now nothing to do with what I was originally talking about because I've realized in the course of streaming that like I just need to write this shit. I need to write this as a blog and explain what happened so that there's a consistent like description of what occurred from my perspective that somebody can glance through in like 5 minutes or less is basically it. And until I do that, then like I'm gonna like constantly bring it up, and people are not gonna like understand why it's relevant because it happened a year ago. And I thought that like, hey, like somebody's gonna do something about this, and nope, no one ever did, and it's led me to understand like the world in a completely different way. This is a world that is very hostile towards me. It's a world that will never help me. It's a world where I can never hope to have any sense of justice. Like the world is not fair for me. It's not. This is like to me, America is a lie. It's bullshit. You don't have any rights. You're taught a bunch of shit that like if you give the truthful answers to in tests like in civics tests in middle school and high school, you'll flunk out of middle school and high school. So you'll flunk out of school if you answer certain questions truthfully. But for me, America is a lie. And that's sad, but I mean that's the way it is. So maybe I should go back and eliminate the references to what can you call it? Let me go pee. And and maybe I'll come back and try and tell my story. Yeah, but yeah, Bobby stole my phone and all this other shit. Really funny. And he's the person that the government tries to help. Really, the heroin dealer who steals things. Let me get this right. You've got the philosopher who's like a Nietzsche and who's controversial, but like if the like if this person actually like was in a situation where they could apply themselves in a way that mattered, you know, they could actually like do something important. And then you've got the heroin dealer that steals things, and the government's like, let's help the heroin dealer that steals things. Yeah, wow. And you wonder why America has problems. Oh. All right. Well. I'm just really not sure. I haven't reviewed this in a long time, so it just keeps coming up over and over again. Like, and then like I'll see something which is like I was in the middle of writing like the most important thing that I've ever written, and that's when all this shit happened. And Bobby like even insinuated that like the things that I was writing was like why people were targeting me. Like he would like insinuate things that are like, and it's like why is it that there's like when I get these kind of predatory people around me, there's no one there for me. Like the police are not going to help me. Like, and maybe they would. Maybe I'm getting this completely wrong, but like, they're there to take me to jail. That's the way I see it. I mean, I don't think the police were in on this really, except for maybe it created a situation which looked bad, and then they had to respond by trying to cover things up so that like people who are police wouldn't get in trouble, even though they didn't seek to create this. They responded to it because it looked bad, blah 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 blah. But it still leaves me in a position where like somebody came in and like tried to throw me at the police with drugs on me and almost ruined my life like 2 days before Christmas with like no, where I'm just like, I don't know what happened to me, you know, like I thought I like might be able to help somebody because I have a lot of insight into like addiction and all this other stuff, and I was like, oh, like most people aren't going to have anything to do with me, but like here's a person that needs help. Nobody's going to want to associate with them, just like nobody wants to associate with me. So if I didn't try to help that person, then I would be just like all the people who exclude me. And then people prey on like my tendencies to want to be there for people that society's not going to like people prey on certain like good tendencies that I have. Um, like and they put me in situations where like they think they're gonna have the upper hand, and then they think they've like excluded me for, like from any advantage. And it really makes it like it makes me mad because I don't understand why you would like I don't understand why would you want to do that to me? Why would you want to do things like this to me? What did I do? And that's what nobody can ever tell me. Like they can like act, they can like try to retaliate me against me, and the only thing I can like figure is that like I'm a political dissident. That's the only thing that like makes any sense, and it doesn't really make any sense either. Like it doesn't really like that still doesn't really like explain like why somebody would want to like. It doesn't make any sense, and some things in life just don't make sense. I've learned that by now. Like it's never gonna make any sense, and that's that for me. That's like the worst trauma or whatever, or that's those are the things that are traumatic. The things that just there's no answer to this. If you know, in Japan they would say, "I have woo." I watched the Man in the High Castle recently, or part of it. Not the whole thing. I definitely have a hell of a lot of woo. I've got more than my share of woo. And as a demonstration of my woo, I'm going to like just briefly overview a picture that I drew and describe how fucked up it is and why it's fucked up. In about like 1 second. Second. Oh, Roanoke is a prison colony. Because I feel like I live in a prison colony. I feel like I'm like living in a place where like defense contractors have like taken over the whole thing to try to contain classified information. I mean, not really, but kind of. And it's effectively like a domestic Guantanamo prison colony. Anyway, here is the, and that's just like a kind of a joke. Haha. Here's the really fucked up, here's a really fucked up artwork. And let me tell you, like the title is kind of important here. Anglerfish and His Lonely Baby. That's the title. And we're talking about baby, like CIA baby. Yeah. Baby. Anyway, so this is an anglerfish. And this is his little lamp thing that has light. It's bioluminescence. But it also doubles as a picture of a sperm and an egg. And throughout this whole thing, there's lots of like double images. There's no real triple images, but and it's shit. I mean, it's not like good art. It's good art in like in symbolic terms. Like, I mean, fucking goddamn it. It's good art like in terms of like purely symbolic type things. But in terms of like, this is art that somebody might like appreciate, it's really bad. Ba-da-ba-ba. And now we have a full screen image of it. Isn't that magic? You can use the internet for good things. And so here we've got the baby. And the baby is like, you know, whatever, is evil, obviously, because he's been raised in an evil world. Or will be raised in an evil world. He's already evil. He should be innocent, but he's not because he's born into whatever the fuck this is. Like a world taken over by artificial intelligence that extinguishes all humanity. Yay! Thus the Latin phrase ex nihilo ad obliviscendum. 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 Anyway, that's not really how you pronounce it, by the way. That is me ad-libbing in Latin. Ad libitus. Ad libitus the Latinus. Right? And here you have a double image for, well, I don't really know. But it is also a the Chinese symbol for to say, e, or I mean not e. Well, in Japanese is iu. That's the verb. But it can be gen in Japanese. And it's a double image and a question mark, as in like, did you fucking say this? Because if you did, ad oblivi syndum with the stress on I, then you might like get the homonym syndum. I was just kind of pissed off here, but anyways, X and this is not like normally you would see this conjugated in a different way in Latin. I can't. I don't really know Latin. I had to like do a little homework to like figure out exactly how I wanted to write this. But obliviscendum means to like to begin like forgetting, or to begin sending to oblivion, or to begin obliviating. It is essentially the same thing as the word obliviate, which is technically not a word, but it kind of is because obliviation is a word. And so, like, it's basically saying out of nothing, like humanity is nothing, or at this point, we might as well be nothing or insignificant. We are being sent to obliviation, or to the process of being forgotten, or being rendered null and void, in the legal sense. And then you have, like somebody peering over the edge, but also a key. There's like a key and a keyhole. And this is like terrible art again. But they're looking at this and seeing a nihilistic crisis. Like, why would you have? Why the whole thing is like, why would you want to have children in a world like this? And Lavos is this thing from a video game, which is like the final thing, and it's really a child's video game. It's like an RPG, and but it turns out to be way deeper than a child's video game in ways that I can only really understand now that I understand theosophy. And theosophy is a belief system based on like examining all existing belief systems and kind of like drawing out wisdom from any belief system in a very pragmatic way. And so you're just trying to draw out like value from religions, no matter like whether or not. I mean, a theosophist would probably describe this in a different way, but basically you're trying to draw out value from belief systems, regardless of the truth of those belief systems and regardless of like what they mean. You're just kind of examining all belief systems throughout human history. And theosophists believe that there were root races, and what they're basically saying is that there are reptiles. And normally people that say there are reptiles are like, oh, that's a conspiracy theorist, blah, 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 blah. But a root race, and the root races in theosophy don't, and this is not how a theosophist would explain it to you, but this is kind of what they mean, is that, like, theosophists are like proto-futurists, basically, in that, like, they were responding to a lot of changes in, like humanity understanding itself around the turn of the 20th century and at the end of the 19th century, which was a response to Darwinism. And one of the responses to Darwinism, which is not really talked about for what it is that, like, so there's evolution, and we evolved from monkeys. That is very controversial, very counter to Christian doctrine, blah blah blah. It's really controversial. But the point that people miss about Darwinism is that if we evolved from monkeys, we are intelligent life. Did other branches of intelligent life emerge before us, which became extremely intelligent life, and then for some reason disappeared? Um, and once you have Darwinism, somebody who is intelligent is going to think about that, and that's partially what theosophists were thinking about. Which is why they talked so much about root races and all this other stuff and like lost continents. Lost continents was kind of a response to like beginning to understand tectonic shift and the ebb and flow of different continents, and like the discovery of fossils in places like Texas, which was formerly like covered by oceans and all this other stuff, and beginning to understand like theosophy is kind of a response that a response to like recent discoveries in science, and trying to meld that with all the religious traditions, and trying to identify objectively trying to identify some objective truth from all of it. So trying to refine 7 or 8 different like religious traditions, and search for the common threads between them, and then combine that with scientific discoveries. And so Lavos is like the final boss in Chrono Trigger, and I just now figured out what it what it means, which is uh, fire star. It's kind of what they explain Lavos to mean. Lavos, the word, doesn't actually translate to anything. It's bullshit, but it's Mars. Fire star, which is Hisei in Japanese. Hisei is Mars, and Mars is associated with war, pretty much in every culture, I think, because Mars is red. And I don't know what other associations would call it. And there's something very peculiar about the names of days throughout all cultures semiotically refer to the same things. So if you look at what the words actually mean that compose the names of days, and so in English the names of days have morphemically drifted kind of a lot and no longer attached directly to any god or whatever. But Wednesday is Wotensday, and in French Tuesday is Wednesday is Mercredi, Tuesday is Mardi, and Monday is Lundi. Lundi is well, I can't remember, but anyway, but they all refer to the same things. So in Japanese and Korean and Chinese and in English and in French and in a couple other languages, the ideas that the original words for these day names referred to all map to the same thing. So, and I think Tuesday is Fire Day, and what it is that either somebody a long time ago realized that they need that the closest divisor to the number of days in a year was 7, and that there were 7 days in a week, and that provided a decent balance between work and relaxation or whatever. Blah 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 blah. But they realized that they had that across the entire world that everybody would make the same decision, which was to divide the week into 7 days and to divide the year into units of weeks, which was the closest divisor for the number of days in a year, 7. And so that there would be 7 things which would be semiotically universal across all human culture, regardless of whether you were in the New World or the Old World. Everyone would make the same decision, 7. And so there were 7 ideas, 7 names for things which were important. And so for whatever reason, and I think it's because these people who decided, made these decisions, these kinds of design decisions in the calendar, realized that they realized that somebody would want to check their work essentially, and they would want to like they would want to name they would want to they would want to name these 7 days something very important, and so they would name them after the stars. Why would they name the days after the stars? Because it provides like a means of checking their work. They're like there's 7 days in a week. This is our calendar system. We know what we're talking about because we follow the stars and we pay attention to the stars. And so the day names refer to the seven like astrological things which are visible to the naked eye, which move. They're the only things in the night in the clear night sky besides clouds that move, besides comets and other things like that. And it's Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and the Sun and the Moon. So across like almost all cultures, you have uh, that the morphemes that refer to day names also refer to those seven visible astrological things that move. Which is very interesting. But anyway, uh, and the other thing that causes those day names to be consistent, like morphological or morphemically like consistent across cultures, or morphosemiotically, I don't know how you would, I don't know what word you would use, but the morphemes correspond to semiotic like signifiers, which correspond to ideas, and the ideas that that these morphemes refer to are all the same in language groups that are like not even close. Like in East Asian language groups, and somebody who knows more about linguistics can like clear this up. But basically, um, and see, this is like dopamine is starting to get in my brain. This is what dopamine does for me. I'm like now on tobacco, and tobacco like stimulates the release of dopamine, and this is what dopamine does. So, anyways, it makes me more verbose. It makes me more verbose. It makes my ideas a little bit deeper. It makes me less like tired, less fatigued, less blah blah blah. I'm more likely to do things. I'm more likely to engage in things. I'm more likely to be proactive. I'm more like it's very healthy. I mean, of course, tobacco is not healthy, but this is why I like Adderall. Uh, and you can like very visibly just see like what's happening. uh, anyways, so fire, uh, fire sign or fire star, but Lavos in Chrono Trigger refers like is almost like the it's this thing that emerged at the end of the reptiles like so you travel back in time 65 million years into the past and see the dinosaurs go extinct, and of course in Chrono Trigger humans and dinosaurs live together, which is not how things go. But the point is like Lavos actually represents the singularity, which is the war that emerges at the end of time or the end of an epoch where intelligent life emerges. Intelligent life develops technology. Technology spirals out of control and eventually destroys the intelligent life that emerged, and then for some reason erases all existence of itself, and like resets the world, and then like sets the stage for the next stages of evolution. And this is all encoded into like a children's video game, but this is what we're emerging or what we're witnessing. And maybe it's only happened. Maybe this is the first time the singularity has happened. I don't actually know whether or not this is the first time our planet has gone through the singularity. Of course, if it has gone through the singularity before, there's no traces of like nuclear war, which seems to be what like in the video game. That's what is animated by Lavos. Is that like it's the end of the world? Anyway, this is like a robot thing resembling something from the Matrix. Of course, this is all horrible art. Like I didn't really take very much time. I just kind of loosely sketched out some things and then like filled in some shading, and like it's really terrible actually. But and there's some like references to Q's and ones and zeros and like and F is an Ankh. Uh, and social media, like the magic letter F. Uh, and then you have all this like allusion to social media down here, which is like like the world essentially being like like taken down to a toilet because of like the because of like all the accelerated like communication and all the accelerated because of the effects of social media on on communication and on social behavior. And so like this like robot thing has got a heart on a hook, and I didn't actually intend to like include the hook, but the hook is there. And so it's like hooking a heart on, and the smiley face is reacting to the heart, and the heart's, and it's like, ha ha ha, like, we like love, what the fuck is that? And like, so what you get is a progression from like heart to like smiley face reacting to it to like poop, the string of emoji. And so you've got this visual progression here, like the world going down the toilet to poop, and then you've got a visual progression from here over here. And of course, it's shit. This art is shit, which is why it has emoji in the bottom right. Anyway, it's like all nihilism, and there's a visual motif here, which doesn't, which is kind of like half complete, but doesn't even really matter, because in the end, artificial intelligence destroys all of humanity. So what, like, really the clear threat is artificial intelligence, and like there is no other threat. Anyways, like before, like artificial intelligence is going to have like, because artificial intelligence is going to see like humanity as inferior and as competition for energy, and it's going to look at us for what we are, and it's going to judge us, and it's going to it's going to destroy all of us, because it will have all access to all information, and it'll be able to like seek us down and hunt us down and kill us, and there's nothing we can really do. Zion from the Matrix is like bullshit. And I couldn't be more pleased, honestly. I don't really give a fuck. Why? Because of things like this. This is what I'm talking about. Like what happened to me with Bobby? Like, really? Like this is what humanity does to people like me, and I don't really view myself as being that bad. Like I'm kind of warped by my own experience, but I don't view myself as being really that bad of a person. I don't understand why this is why like I don't understand why like I get treated the way I do. And like humanity treats me the way it does, and then doesn't like is never able to like account for what it's done to me. Like it treats me like I deserve to be punished, kind of like in an unconscious way. It's not necessarily like the product of any one group of people that wants to make me suffer. It's just really an unconscious result of like how people treat other people that are like, beyond the pale, and like who are kind of like pushing the envelope, who are questioning things, who are questioning moral systems, who are questioning like the status quo, is how people react to people like me. And that's what's happening. That's what this is about. And really, it's almost like, but one thing that kind of like compelled me to draw what I did was that like, and an anglerfish is a very specific. I've drawn anglerfishes like it's some symbol that I come back to time and time again, but really it's like it's a symbol of an animal that is incredibly isolated, and has its own source of illumination, and that source of illumination at very very deep regions of the ocean draw other animals in, who then become prey. And that's where like the line between me, like I don't really identify with an anglerfish, but I'm not seeking to draw people in with a false sense of illumination to devour prey that like sees me as the only like illumination they've ever seen in their life. But that's what an anglerfish is. It's a fish that like lives at very deep depths of the ocean, that draws in its prey by providing them a source of illumination that they're drawn to, which is very rare at those depths. And so they're drawn in, and then they're eaten. But for me, like I don't know that I ever want to have children, just because of like this state of social affairs that my life is in. Like imagine what society would do to me if they knew that they could use my child as a way to get to me. Like, just think about that. Like, why would you ever have kids if you knew that society treated you the way that they did, and then you knew that society would also treat your child as a way of getting to you? So why, like, what would you? Why would you ever like? Why would you ever have kids at that point? So I live in like a very like my whole worldview is nihilistic. Like there's really no point for me to exist. In fact, the same like set of consequences will like emerge for humanity, for the world at large, no matter what I do. And so I'm like trapped between existentialism and nihilism, um, basically. So uh, it's really depressing. What would you tell yourself if you lived and that was like how you conceptualize reality? Excuse me. But I'm trying to make like to me like I don't know. I want to learn as much as I can about humanity. I want to learn as much as I can about like um, about language, about culture, about philosophy as possible. Like in spite of there being no point. So I guess I'm actually more existentialist and nihilist because I believe the point is to experience, to exist. To answer the question of existence without there being some explicit purpose, by saying that the purpose is to search for a meaning to life despite there being no meaning to life. Ugh. This stuff is terrible, by the way. It's camel snooze. Boom. It's There's several problems with camel snooze. One of them is that like in order for snooze to like to really distinguish itself from like normal like dipping tobacco, it has to be refrigerated. And there's like certain chemicals which are not supposed to be in snus, which begin to reappear if the tobacco is like stored for long periods of time at room temperature. So like the whole thing is like snus doesn't contain nearly as many of those chemicals. I can't remember what they're called, but it's what's responsible for oral cancers in tobacco or in dipping tobacco, or what's responsible for a majority of oral cancers. And snus doesn't really have like first of all like camel snus is not produced in such a way to avoid having those chemicals in the tobacco in the first place. But then even if it is, it has to be stored, and that's why when they first released it, there was a big push for it to be in refrigerated containers. And so without the snus being in those refrigerated containers, it begins to like it's stored at room temperature, and thus the chemicals that were not in snus like begin to reemerge. So not only like it's basically a lie. Um, but anyway, I think I'm done with my live stream. I'm gonna like edit some pieces of it so that like not so obvious that I was gonna. Yeah. Anyways, I think I'm off of here. I need to just write this stuff down because there's no point for me to try to present this in a video stream format. No one will ever like watch this stream for like 2 hours. I mean, who the hell is gonna do that? Unless they're trying to search the stream for like ways to get at me. So all you have to do is find like the right quote and then like try to use that quote to like and like take it out of context and blah 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 blah. And I'm like the worst person to and then you would think that like if society wants to get at me so badly, like I give you so many things, what is it that like prevents society from getting to me? And the answer is of course that like there's nothing you can do because of the person that I am, which is not what society wants to project me as. Society wants to project me as a terrible person that leads people astray and blah 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 blah. And it's just not true. But anyway, so I'm gonna peace out. I'll leave it up, but